Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Heather. This is my very first YouTube video, so hopefully it's not too bad. If there's one thing I learned lately though, you don't get better at anything unless you actually do it. In this video we're going to make the blouse for Maple. Maple is a character from a video game called Your Turn to Die. Now my daughter requested this costume for Halloween and wanted to do cosplay with it as well. I don't know a lot about the game. She came up with the idea, so it's possible if you're here to watch this video that you know more about the game than I do. So sorry about that if that's disappointing. My daughter drew me this picture. I took some time to think about how to do it. She asked me to do it, it probably was summertime, and she drew me a picture beginning of September. I thought I had a lot of time. I looked for some patterns that could match it so I didn't have to draft anything. In the end I couldn't find anything, and then I started drafting, and then I kind of left it for a while. Then time was getting tight and decided that, well, I better get the fabric purchased, and I saw some Butterick patterns that actually worked really well for what we were wanting to do. So I ended up getting those and modifying them. I'll show you that process. Oh, the back tentacles on there, yeah, that was never going to happen, unfortunately. That would just make her life too difficult in the costume, and my life, I could figure it out if I really wanted to, but I wasn't sure that was something I wanted to do. I ended up looking at a lot of steampunk costumes because the vest was very similar to that. There's not a lot of steampunk costume patterns out there that I can find. I guess they're mostly just purchased clothing. I'm not really sure. If someone knows of a steampunk pattern company, I would love to hear about it. The best ones I found were at the Big Four. I guess that's what they still call them, even though I don't know if they're the Big Four, because I think they're the big one now. I hope you enjoyed this video of me constructing the costume. This pattern is one that you could just buy from the store yourself, and the skill level is, even if you're a beginner, you can do it. No problem. I wasn't able to find a pattern for the type of vest that I was looking for online, and I'd resigned myself to drafting a pattern. I hadn't even thought about the blouse much yet, but I knew if I drafted the bodice block that I could easily do the blouse with the same bodice block as the vest. So, after drafting the pattern, I just decided to go buy some. I'm used to these patterns. I've really used a lot of them, Big Four type patterns in my life, as well as independent PDF type patterns. And I love having instructions to follow. So I guess it depends on what my timeline is like, and right now it's tight. So it's tight because I procrastinated, and that's pretty normal for me. So got these one McCall's and Butterick pattern. I'm going to modify the bodice on this one. This one I'm using it for the blouse. I'm going to leave off the lace, and this blouse is perfect because it zips up the back, and I just realized I don't have a zipper. Oh, well, okay. Anyway, back to the store at some point, I guess. So the cuffs I can make in the purple color and the collar also, and I think it'll be perfect with this modified vest over top, skirt. And what I am going to do too, I ordered, I think it was yesterday or Friday, some cage crinoline materials, and well, basically hoop steel is what I ordered. And then I got a whole whack of tapes, double fold bias tape in black because it's going to be black, and as much as I could have made the bias tape, I'm not, no. And then this white bias tape or cream bias tape is going to be the edge of the skirt. The skirt's got like kind of like drips like syrup, so I needed a way to hem the skirt that was going to allow me to have a whole bunch of curves. I cut out a straight size 14. I didn't grade or do any adjustments because I thought that the pattern and the seam allowances would be generous enough to make adjustments if I needed them. It turns out I had just barely enough fabric to fit. In fact, if I had done a size up, I don't think I would have. I was supposed to get a little more yardage, but I always have leftover fabric, so I figured I'd get a little less. I don't really like to cut my patterns completely out, so I cut the largest size and trace. I could only find this blue chalk tracing paper at the time, and I regretted it after. It got all over the white. Most of it brushed off, but I definitely needed something better than that. I cut out the cuffs and collar from the vest material and used whatever random iron-on interfacing I could find, which ended up being too heavy. If I had to do it over, I would use lighter interfacing. The pattern called for sew-in interfacing, but I ignored that part. Remember how I said I would need to go back to the store for a zipper? Yeah, that was a lie. I mean, I would have to go back if I needed an invisible one, but I decided a regular one would do. So I went through my super stash. I don't know how I ended up with so many, but I bought them in bulk online, so they're much cheaper that way. I don't know that I will ever have all that I need, but I'm stocked for most things. I started with serging all the edges except the neckline and cuff areas. I think serging is pretty much my favorite part, assuming my machine is working okay. I've had this serger for 30 years and it still works great. I measured how long the zipper would go down. I didn't bother to read the instructions here that tell me to insert the zipper after doing the rest and putting the collar on, so the zipper doesn't go all the way up the collar. At this point, I also pinned all the darts to be ready for sewing. I inserted the cutout piece in the front of the blouse and was pretty happy with how it went in. I was still oblivious to the fact that I could have just stuck the two pattern pieces together and cut it out as one piece. I pinned and sewed up the back seam to get it ready for the zipper. I basted where the zipper would go and stitched the regular stitch length below it.
I usually baste the zipper open and closed, and then hand baste the zipper in place. I prefer to do this because I find that pins ripple the seam a lot. The double-sided basting tape is really pricey. I see a lot of people using that, but basting by hand only takes a few minutes with a needle and thread, and the results are really worth it. I have to switch out the foot to a zipper foot before I stitch the zipper in. After that, it's pretty easy to sew around the zipper. I like the industrial zipper foot way better than the snap-on ones of domestic machines because it doesn't move around as much. I think vintage zipper feet are very similar in this. At this point, I pinned and sewed up both side seams. Then I sewed up both shoulder seams. Now I was ready to put the collar on. I had ignored the fact that I needed 2 collar pieces, so at this point I had to cut another one, but at least I didn't cut 2 interfacing pieces. The collar would have had a life of its own if I did that. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I just know this is what the instructions said to do. I sewed the 2 collar pieces together and then understitched and then pinned and sewed it onto the neckline. Remember, I like to have instructions, but I don't always use them. I'm pretty sure the instructions said to hand sew the inside edge, but I was not going to do that and opted to stitch in the ditch instead. Yes, I hand sew where I'm not asked to and machine sew where I'm not supposed to. It's at this point I realized the zipper was supposed to go into the collar. I assumed I would use a hook and eye or something, but nope, I was wrong. Almost there. Now for the sleeves. I usually like inserting sleeves. I hear that's not normal, but I'm not a fan of gathering, and this sleeve was a puff sleeve, so it needed to be gathered at the shoulder and at the cuff. With the gathering stitches done, I now had to figure out what they wanted me to do with the cuffs. I don't really understand why it had me pre-press the bottom fold in, but I did it anyway. And after pressing it in half and pressing the bottom fold up, I realized the cuffs were way narrower than the design. Trying to make it as wide as possible, I then ignored my pressed lines and folded a much smaller amount under and pinned. What you're seeing here is the second cuff that I did. That's why nothing's pressed under yet, because I refused to do it for the second one. I was also supposed to hand sew the inside edge here, but decided to stitch in the ditch here too. I gathered the sleeve at the shoulder and set the sleeve in. Then I realized the armhole seam allowance was way too thick, so I trimmed it with my serger. Lastly was the hem. I folded up something like 1/2 inch and stitched around the bottom, leaving the serging as an inside finish. I think it said fold twice, but that was more work than I wanted to do. I stitched up the edges of the collar too, just to have a finished edge. I didn't get a chance to film the blouse as a finished piece on its own, so here are some photos of it. I also didn't get a chance to film the making of the bow at the neck, so here it is in photos.
Thanks for watching my first YouTube video. I had a lot to learn to get to this point, and I still have a lot more to learn. From the editing to the video posting on YouTube, I don't really know what I'm doing, so please like and subscribe if you would like to see more. I will also be posting a blog about this on my website, Heather's Creative Adventures. I'll post a link in the description when that goes up. There are 3 more videos in this series, so yeah, if you subscribe, it'll let you know when the other videos are out. I'm hoping within the next few weeks I'll get them all done. In part 2, I'm going to make a cage crinoline for under the skirt. That actually, when I started making this costume, was not in the plans. Thought we'd just have a petticoat. But yeah, turned out we wanted to do cage crinoline, and it turned out pretty good, I thought. I mean, the costume looked pretty awesome in the end, so I'll show you that when we get to the last video. Thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.